It's not known exactly where or when bronze making first began, but it revolutionized the way tools and weapons were made, and the new technology spread quickly throughout the ancient world.
Bronze is so important because it's such a versatile material. So when it was discovered that one could alloy copper with tin to make bronze, it was a great improvement because copper is really soft and it doesn't make a good working edge for a tool or a weapon. But when allied with tin, it becomes harder and more durable, and it keeps a sharper edge. Therefore, the tools are better, the weapons are better.
Bronze Age tools and weapons were often interchangeable and consisted of axes, swords, daggers, and spears. In the early Bronze Age, warfare was localized. Small groups of men attacked nearby settlements for land, resources, and women. But as the wealth and size of settlements grew and societies became more urbanized, warfare spread. By the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, the earliest professional standing armies were organized to defend communities in southern Mesopotamia.
The normal political situation in southern Mesopotamia was that of the city-state, and each important city had its own political area that it controlled. And they were very competitive. They fought with one another. Sometimes they conquered one another. And there would be these ambitious rulers like Sargon around 2300 who tried to unify all of them. And for a while that worked, and then it would fall apart again and they'd go back to their city-states again.
The Sumerians were the first to use body armor and helmets in battle. They're credited with the invention of the sickle sword and the earliest known chariots. The Sumerians executed well-disciplined formations in battle and launched the first missile troops, using men armed with javelins. Their military techniques and weapons were quickly adopted around the region, giving other ancient adversaries a greater advantage.
New innovations and new technology usually do give you an edge, whether it's in war or society or elsewhere. And so we do see these new adoptions. For instance, there's a group called the Hyksos that come in and they invade Egypt in about 1720 BC. Don't quite know where they come from, but it's probably the region that today we would call Israel, Lebanon, Syria. And they come in and they take over Egypt because they have a new type of chariot. And they have a new type of bow, the composite bow. This particular bow, made out of composite materials, could shoot probably twice as far as a regular bow. So with these new types of chariots and the new type of bow, the Hyksos overrun and take over Egypt. And they rule it until about 1550 BC. By that point, the Egyptians have adopted that chariot and the composite bow in return, and they're able then to kick the people back out again.
By the late Bronze Age, Egypt was a military powerhouse. It turned from a relatively peaceful kingdom protected by the natural boundaries of the Nile River and Mediterranean Sea to a leading Bronze Age empire. A rich warrior class joined the military as charioteers. Army divisions numbered 5,000 strong, launching fierce battles to conquer their enemies.
We have from Egypt, from the town of Amarna, a cache of over 300 letters written in Akkadian in cuneiform. And these letters detail the relationships between not only the pharaoh in Egypt, but the different rulers of the small city kingdoms and large powerhouses like Babylon and Assyria and Mesopotamia. In the letters, the openings will begin by saying, "Brother, how are you? How is your wife? How are your chariots?" The chariots are very, very important. And if you look at the art from this time, coming from various different societies, you see the chariot very heavily stressed. And these chariots seem to have been a sort of international symbol of power and prestige at the time.
As Bronze Age empires grew, so too did their need to control land and resources.
There are the great powers like Egypt and Assyria and Babylon, and especially the Hittites. So you've got the Egyptians fight the Hittites, Hittites fight the Assyrians, and so on. And there are winners and losers in the battles and the wars.
In the Aegean, the Mycenaeans emerged as a powerful warrior-based society. Their militaristic culture produced great wealth for their elites. The Mycenaeans are best known for their famous attack on the ancient city of Troy. According to legend, after a fierce 10-year battle, the great Mycenaean king Agamemnon finally conquered Troy. The Trojan War became the basis for Homer's Iliad, written some 400 years after the end of the Mycenaean era.
We don't know if the Mycenaeans saw themselves as an independent nation in the way we would think of a nation. They might have saw themselves as inhabitants of a particular city, for instance, or the speakers of a certain language, or the worshiper of a certain god, rather than someone in a nation. But having said that, they were kind of teetering between fighting with each other and kind of getting along. It probably was a kind of uneasy alliance, and they probably came together to fight off external invaders, but when there was no one invading them, they probably were at each other's throats.
The Mycenaeans celebrated their victories in their artwork and buried their prized weapons in tombs along with their dead.
They had spears, they had short swords, they had these figure-8 shields made of wood draped with cowhide. They had boar's tusk helmets. Hunting of boar was a very potent symbol of Mycenaean male power. We know that they possessed horses. There are horses and chariots in fresco paintings and illustrated on weapons themselves.
The chariot is certainly part of the picture, but because of the terrain in Greece being so rugged, it's not very hospitable for chariots, and therefore we don't really think that chariots were a major part of warfare in a practical sense. Chariots were, however, a very strong symbolic element of the elite. So elites depicted themselves in chariots. And of course, this is something that they extracted from the East, from places like Egypt, where chariots were actually practical tools of warfare.
The elites of the late Bronze Age may have possessed powerful weapons and controlled large armies, but it wasn't enough to save their empires. In the end, their greatest enemy was an unexpected one that led to the collapse of the ancient world.